I always, like, the joke I always tell it to people, it's like, oh, there's only 3 types of people in Utah. There's Mormons, ex-Mormons, and Californians. Meaning, like, you're either born Mormon, you are, or the people that came here.
I felt like I could hide in it. I am Mormon, I'm being raised Mormon, I'm Mormon. I've never fit in, and I've always felt kind of watching my life and not, like, existing in it. I still wasn't out yet as gay, and I just sort of decided I was going to, like, lean into the band and, like, being an artist because I could hide there. I noticed a shift with Jared. It was a lesson to be like, you're Jared Leto, you're like, why are you jealous of, like, a little moment that a little band's having?
Yeah.
And I'm fine to talk about this because he's a jackass. But it was an opportunity. The writer from Rolling Stone came out to Pleasant Grove, where I was living in an apartment. She did a whole story about how I still wanted to be gay, but wanted to be Mormon. I love weed and mushrooms and stuff. I've never felt higher and more exhilarated than relinquishing that shame.
If you're trying to keep up with everything life throws at you, work, workouts, long runs, rounds of golf, whatever it might be, having your nutrition dialed matters. That's why I use Gnarly Nutrition, from supporting my recovery to fueling performance and helping me feel good no matter what I've got going on. And even better, they're located right here in Utah. Whether you're in the gym, on the trail, or just trying to get through your day, Gnarly has you covered. Check them out through the link in the description to see why they've become part of my daily routine.
Oh, yeah.
But no, because it's kind of funny. Like, this time last year, I had this, like, stupid idea come to my head where I was like, I want to throw a small lake city music festival.
Cool.
Of, like, not understanding how much fucking work that takes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then but then I was like, well, who would it be? And, like, thankfully, like, which is like a wild thing for Utah, there's enough noteworthy and recognizable bands and people that I'm like, well, it'd be kind of cool, because it's like, I mean, you like Dan Reynolds and Imagine Dragons, you have Neon Trees, you have, I mean, Post Malone falls into that category now. I mean, you even have like NBA Youngboy technically, so you have like all of these things, and I was like, that could be a pretty cool group. But then obviously, as I look through what it all takes, I'm like, maybe one day, but not today. But then it's been fun. Like, you're someone who I've seen and followed since, like, what, 15 plus years now?
Yeah, it's probably 20. Yeah, I moved to Provo in 2005, so it was 20 years. Yeah, 21 years.
That's, I mean, probably the person that showed up in Provo in 2005 and the person you are today are two very different people. That
They are, and they're like the same. It's like, I mean, I'm a Californian at my core, but I've been in Utah for 20 years, so it's half my life. I'm 42, so yeah, it's kind of split right down the middle. And I still am very much myself, and have found like my groove here. But yeah, I'm also very much like a Californian.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I always, like, the joke I always tell it to people, like, when talking about Utah, it's like, oh, there's only 3 types of people in Utah. There's Mormons, ex-Mormons, and Californians. Meaning, like, you're either born Mormon, you are, or the people that came here. So you get to kind of like hover over like 2 or 3, like, I guess depending on how you talk about it. But
yeah,
want to go back to the beginning. Actually, I want to go before you got here, but like, before you came here, I mean, what got you into music? What made you be like, you know what, this is the dream I want to chase? Or even just that introduction of like, put that thought in your head.
It's always had to do with identity for me and music. So like my mom put me into like dance and ballet because I wasn't good at sports, and she wanted me to be active. But I just found when I had the autonomy to like buy a CD and like go watch a music video on TV and stuff, like I identified with that, and I felt like I could hide in it because it's the 90s. I am Mormon. I'm being raised Mormon. I'm Mormon. But I've never fit in, and I don't say that in some like cool, like I've never fit in just way. I've never fit into where I've been, and I've always felt kind of watching my life and not like existing in it. And that was part of my childhood. And so music was this full escape for me. And the way people watch, I mean, I love film and I love movies, but the way people like watch films and like lose themselves in it, I listen to that. I fall into a record. Like I lose myself into to music very easily. And it didn't really come like to my mind that I could do it until my friend started learning guitar and then said he needed a singer. And it was just like us, fucking off in his garage. But it was it's bonding too. I like was bonding with my guy friends and
Especially like go through that together, because it's not
going
like
through it.
he's learning the guitars like, all right, I know how this all works.
Yes.
I know what I want you to do. It's like we're just gonna strum, we're gonna figure things out, and we're gonna, try to put something together. But at the end of the day, we're still hanging out, being homies in a garage.
And we sucked. I mean, I was finding my voice, so I was probably emulating like Billy Joe Armstrong and like Stephen Jenkins from Third Eye Blind, and like even some Dashboard, like Chris Carrabba, just that kind of nasally, because that was what sounded right coming out, and that's what I was listening to in the early 2000s, late 90s, and then once I started performing with him, and we would just, we would busk, like it's Temecula, California, so it's still the suburbs, but we would go to like places where people shop and stuff, and busk, and it was the minute that I could see I could affect energy in the room with my voice, and like there was something like palatable that people responded to. And then I started reading like Bruce Springsteen's autobiography, and he like was swept away with his story, and I was just like, I think there's something possible here, but I don't know how to do it. I'm from Temecula. Like I would go to shows all the time, like San Diego and LA are the neighbor cities. Right. So like, I became a scene kid in, the late 90s, early 2000s, and went to shows, and that became like more palatable, to start music. And I met my guitar player who's in Neon Trees, Chris, and he was in my ward in California, and he was a little older than me, and we just like, we had nothing to talk about except when we were talking about music, and then we had everything to talk about. So it was years before we had real conversations, because we would just talk about music, or we would talk about making the music or performing the music.
Yeah, which is so fun to have, because like if you have this side of you that resonates with music, that when you experience it, it hits your soul. To have someone who can like resonate with that is such a hard thing to find, especially when you're living in this kind of like very micro community within Southern California, and like this LDS community, to be like, hey, there's part of me that isn't seen. Not many people can see it, and then all of a sudden there's this person who speaks that language instantly. And
absolutely, and it's I always have to emphasize, it's pre-internet, it's pre-cell phones, it's pre American Idol, it's pre like any sort of like tangible, like, oh, I could go do that and maybe break in, like so it was full speaking a language, and then I went on a mission.
Where'd you go?
Not expected. I went to Nebraska.
Hell yeah.
And I it was very unexpected, but I sort of at the time was like, I'm either gonna like dive into what this Mormon thing is and do that, or I'm gonna go to college. And I don't want to go to college because I want to start a band, but I need like this 2-year window to figure it out. Yeah. And I went on my mission and had a great experience, to be honest with you. I'm vehemently not LDS anymore, but like that's kind of the section of my Mormon experience I don't throw out, because
that's kind of where I'm at too. Because a lot of people ask me like, well, you're not Mormon now, and like not at all.
No,
but like, what do you think about it? I'm like, well, if I go back in time and I didn't do that, what would those 2 years look like? I probably would have just gone to college earlier, started drinking, partying, doing whatever. Sure. But like, to have that accountability, to have that responsibility, to have like something you have to do.
Where did you go?
Washington State.
Okay, so
like
we were stateside nerds.
Yeah, exactly. I still had a car. I had an apartment. I had a Walmart nearby.
Yeah.
But like because I'm with you. Like I always have this kind of like cognitive dissonance about it, where like there's parts of it I dislike, but at the end of the day, I'm like, it's actually
your
a great foundation. Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like as much as we can get to that section of my life, but like as much as I wanted to burn it all down, like and reject a lot of it, it's still my only life that I've experienced,
and you can't change that.
And I call that my coming of age too. It's like my 19 to 21. Yeah. Like you said, a lot of people go to college and experience with sex and drugs and things like that, or go to college and start their career and their families, or whatever path. And I needed that 2-year window, but I was so fixated on starting the band when I got back, and it came back in 2005 for my mission.
And was it like, when you're on your mission, was it like in the back of your head constantly of just music or whatever, and what you were thinking, and like journaling ideas?
And I mean, I had a Tascam 4-track recorder because again, this is early 2000s, so and you're on a mission, so you don't necessarily have access to like
Yeah.
time or Pro Tools or whatever, and that didn't even exist. But yeah, on my P days, I would record songs and
Cool.
sometimes after hours too. I reflect on like the worst things I did on my mission, and it really was just like record music or like sometimes sneak music,
Yeah.
which is what a sin, you know.
How
But, like,
dare you?
yeah, but like I didn't do the nefarious things I think people would think
Yeah.
maybe I have done or would have done, or I was not. Yeah, I was not out like breaking the rules the way that maybe it's.
That's how I was. Like I was, for all like intents and purposes, like I was an obedient good missionary. Like
Right.
I remember one of my companions would like we got the Beatles White Album.
Yeah.
And listened to that, and that was great. And he was like, I just need like, it's spiritual to me. I was like, I'm not gonna say no.
Yeah.
And then like because like, I was a Spanish speaking missionary, so be like, let's go listen to some like
We listened to Taking Back Sunday and like Fall Out Boy. So, but like we would do it on P days or like to psych us up.
yes.
Like it was always trying to relate back to.
But
let's
like
go teach.
compared to the worst things that I like knew and heard of missionaries doing, like we're good, like we're fine.
Yeah. No, I mean no, like. Yeah, we could.
Yeah, that's a whole other tangent.
But it also converted me. I think my mission, which better for worse, like I was always very skeptical of the church, but I knew that it brought my family happiness, and it was my like conduit to God at the time. So like, I didn't believe in it full send until through my mission, and I think the experiences on my mission sort of like kind of solidified it. And yet I still didn't feel like I fit into it, but I think I bought into the idea that this is true, and I don't want to turn my back on it because it's brought me like good things.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't out yet, like as gay, and so like, and I hadn't even like had a sexual experience with a guy till after my mission. So I didn't know the lane I was gonna take. And I think even in the era that I grew up, how old are you?
35.
Okay, I'm 42, so a little older, but like the 90s like just didn't have any space for you to be out. And then obviously the Mormon church did not really have space for you to be out. It wasn't talked about, you know? And then I think it became an issue after my mission with like Prop 8 in California and stuff. But I just sort of decided I was going to like lean into the band and like being an artist because I could hide there. Like I could dress a little weird, or I could like be into music.
Well,
and
that's kind of
people
how
weren't
I was
attacking me, like
yes,
or thinking, oh, he's gay. Like it was more like hiding in that.
because I think a
alt
lot
scene.
of people need some sort of avenue to like. Because again, growing up in Salt Lake City, Utah, it was everywhere, and I didn't realize it was everywhere until I left. And it wasn't until because like I was never really active in like middle school, high school. Then I saw my friends doing it, my family like wanting me to go, so I went.
Sure.
And then come back, and I was in college, and like that was a roller coaster for me of like in out, yes, no, yes, no. But it wasn't until I moved to Seattle where it was like blank space. There is no influence. Do whatever you need to. Here's this other way to experience it. Where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna like put it in its like box for now and just experience life, and kind of give me that like lack of like societal familial pressure and just.
Funny enough, moving to Utah was that for me. Like
let's talk about
didn't have
that.
my
'Cause
parent influence.
Yeah.
Well, so my guitar player Chris, who still plays in Neon Trees, he moved while I was on my mission to Utah. I was like, damn it, like
I needed you.
yeah, and like I could not fathom moving to Utah to start a music career, but that's what I was doing because
Which seems so counterintuitive from being
So
in Southern
counter.
California. Like we're
Yeah.
going to Provo.
especially this is years before. I think maybe the Killers had popped off, but like they weren't necessarily associated with like Utah, like maybe with Brandon a little bit, but you know, like they were from Vegas and like
Yeah.
so it was a different thing. But it made no sense. I was like, we're in California, like we're close to LA, like we need to be near the industry, like whatever I thought was that at the time. And so I moved there to like move to Provo to just kind of buy time and like in my mind go like I'm gonna bring Chris back and we'll start the band.
Nice.
But he like Velour was being built the like month I moved there, and it was like just finishing. And so before that it was just Muse Music, which I had been familiar with a little bit, was a venue on that block where Velour is now.
Got
And when we would take like other brothers on missions, we would come up as a family to Provo, and like so I knew Provo a little bit in like that cursory like college town way, but like not really like anything other than that. And I moved into a house, immediately was just like, had no purpose other than like we're playing music and we got a show at a bowling alley that doesn't exist anymore. And we walked in because we all looked like we played in a band, but we hadn't even like started writing like songs as Neon Trees. And the guy was like, "Are you the band?" And we're like, "No, but we can be." He's like, "Well, I got a slot on Saturday." It was like 4 days later.
Yeah.
We literally hunkered down and like wrote like 7 songs and like learned the Radiohead cover and just like it was a mix of like songs I'd written on my mission, songs we'd written before I'd left on it, and then we were like a 5-piece band instantly. And then from there I'm sure we were shitty, but like I'm sure we had glimmers. Like we brought 75 people our first show, which is
I mean, that's huge,
nothing to blink
especially
at.
in like that time of the year before.
Dude, before like anything, yeah, like it was MySpace, I think, probably. And then from there we just would play, and I met Corey Fox from Velour, and he was just opening, and he had a real like sense of wanting to curate. I don't know how much he does now. I think he still does, but like he was very gatekeepy, for lack of a better word, with who he wanted to play at his venue.
Which like you can't fault him. Like,
no, I get it now. Like,
and it's nice to be on like that side of the gatekeeping, you know?
Because I have friends that were in bands that were not included in.
Yeah, and last thing you want to do is be like, "Hey, Corey, like here's my friend." You're like, "I'm barely making the cut." Like,
sure,
sorry.
He had just a belief in us early on. Yeah. What I value from Provo and like what was really surprising was how many kids wanted, like no one was, I mean, I'm sure people were experimenting with things, but not in my periphery. And like I wasn't at the time.
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you feel like you were doing that was so different at the time?
I wasn't doing drugs and I wasn't drinking.
That makes sense.
And I wasn't, I was going on Craigslist and trying to find gay hookups. I will be honest with you, but that was a fun time. Sneaking on my friend's laptop, thinking he wouldn't see it. History, and then later when I came out, he's like, "Yeah, I knew you." Like, secret. But that's another thing. But yeah, we weren't participating in like drugs and drinking and stuff. So like, the party scene was going to Velour and seeing bands play, and it became like a real scene. And I think it was rare. You wouldn't have found that in Temecula, where I came from, or like probably even in LA, because that's such a huge city. It was very specific, and it really let like bands and kids start bands and be artists and like cut their teeth and like get a crowd of 350 kids come and like make it feel like an event. And I owe so much gratitude to those early salad days in Provo, because they really like allowed us years to really build like a sound and just like play 4 times a week around in the different venues or
try different things, see what works.
It was
and
amazing.
like with you, if you're not playing, you're probably in there listening and just being like, "Well, this guy sucks."
Yeah, I'm
working
working as a door guy sometimes, like at Muse and stuff. So it was like, just it allowed you to romanticize something during that time in your life. I mean, I'm 21, 22, so.
Well, I love that you have this like. You have this awakening in like your teens of being like, I love music. I mean, what a great time to like love music.
Yeah.
You go on your mission where it's like, okay, kind of like detour from that mentally, spiritually, emotionally, however you want to talk about it. But then it's like almost as soon as you come back, it's like this light switch back. Yeah. You're like, okay, Chris is now in Provo. Chris? Was it Chris?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Chris is in Provo now. I want to bring him back, so I'm going to go there. But then you find this world that like allows you to, again, not just have this one person you can experience it in, but this whole kind of like micro community within this like juxtaposition of that community within it.
It's true. And and I met people that I like that have still, like Dallin Weeks, who played in the Brobecs and played in Panic at the Disco and does I don't know how, and he's created his own thing. And obviously Dan Reynolds was going to BYU, and there was just all this stuff simultaneously happening. And I realize I'm in my 40s and I can romanticize that time of my life, but it really was like special. I would hope it still is like that. I don't go down there anymore, really. Like I go there, to support occasionally, but it feels very far away. But it truly was a cool little time.
Yeah.
During that era.
So during that era, you're playing, you're experimenting, you're figuring out what your sound looks like. You're with these new guys.
Yeah.
Just again dressing to be in a band to the point someone's like, "Hey, you was a band?" Like, can be.
Yeah, we just looked cool or whatever.
And I mean, going from where you were basking in Husky. Wait, what's the term? Why did I just forget that? Where you're playing on streets?
Oh, in Temecula, Wait, busking?
Yeah,
What?
busking. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
where you're like busking in Temecula, and then where you can like see people like, oh, like I can tell that like I made an impact on this person, on this person. I mean, at what point did you make that next step where you're like, hey guys, I think we're on to something bigger than just
Yeah.
the velour in Provo?
It it was like regional touring. Like our guitar player Chris bought a like a shuttle bus,
Yes.
like an airplane shuttle bus, and like honestly lived in it for a while too. But he just provided that, and we would go like St. George, Idaho, Nevada, and like start touring, and then you meet other like bands that are like small that are kind of budding, and you're building we're building a MySpace following and a pure volume following, and our bassist, Brandon Campbell, had grown up with Ronnie from the Killers, and they obviously became one of like the big bands
Yep.
on earth, and it was around 2008 when there were some slots to open for them, and Ronnie came and saw us play in Vegas at like again like a bowling alley or something. There were 10 people there, like really like early days when, especially like in Provo, we were bringing maybe 300-400 people, but like in Vegas, like no one.
Yep.
And he just clocked that we were playing for 10,000 people and saw something in us and offered us like just a couple opening slots for some killer shows. And they were pivotal shows because it was the same shows that David Massey, who is a legend in music, he signed Oasis and Good Charlotte and the Jonas Brothers, and like he's like a storied guy. He was going to those shows, and he ended up signing us after like the second show in San Francisco, and offering us a deal for Mercury Records at the time, which was Island and Universal. And it didn't come quick because we had ostensibly started in 2005, so 2000 end of 2008, it was a good 3 years of truly eat sleeping and breathing.
Which is
the
how
band.
a lot of people don't realize that's how it is.
Yeah.
Like in the age of social media and TikTok and Instagram, it's
There,
like,
I mean, now you could get
but like that's like the exception, not the rule, I would argue.
yeah, no,
And
yeah,
like I
agree.
always love the quote from, I believe it's Tyler the Creator, where he's like, just keep putting stuff out there.
Yeah,
Like
I love
upload it,
that-
post it,
that
do whatever.
idea from
You
him,
never
yeah.
know who's watching, who's
It's true.
listening, and it will happen. Just like you. I mean, you're in Vegas performing at a bowling alley,
Right.
and one of those 10 people happens to be one of the most influential people that can take your career.
I have
from
to remind
anywhere.
myself that still, like, because I still will get caught up in the curation of it, and that might just be because I came from a time where people did listen to albums in full and like cared more about that. And I think presentation is key, but like I agree with that quote from him where it's just like, it really is true. Just you gotta just keep throwing things out and people will latch to something.
Yeah.
And we've seen that now, like in the era we live in now. But yeah, no, it was cool. And like it sent us right into like moving to LA and writing and then recording a record. And
So you finally got Chris back to LA, Southern California.
we did. Yeah, we did. There was a period of time where we moved there to try to be close to like some industry peers. And then I am skipping like a part where there was a band called Sugar Cult. Do you remember that's a pop punk band?
Yes.
They were hot at a moment, and the singer also simultaneously had us open for them, and he ended up recording our first record. He produced our whole first album, and really like, I mean, the songs like Animal and Everybody Talks and like those jams that we're sort of known for are things that I wrote with him. So like he's a big component of our story too. And he had us open for him just because he liked a T-shirt that he saw, and it was like the show was in St. George, and we're like, he's like, drive down. So it was like little things were happening, but again, to your point, and to like what we were just talking about, like it is just getting out there and taking every opportunity. And like the version of that in 2007, 2008 was like playing any show possible and just always showing up.
And I'm always curious about that with, I mean, bands, especially where, I mean, there's 5 of you, all of you have your part to play in it. But when it comes to, I mean, the writing music, the creating of music, were you the one that was leading a lot of like the creative process, or was
Yeah.
it a lot more collaborative? And I know it's different band by
It was
band, and
very,
person by person.
it was way more collaborative when we were sort of a band in a van. Once and I always steered the ship. I was always writing the lyrics and the melodies, but we were in there really like shedding.
Yeah.
But I think once we started getting into recording, like I really steered it even more, and it became more collaborative with our producer. And these days, it's like I feel like I'm grateful that we are in a place as a group that we're really egoless. I mean, we always are still like we're artists, so we're going to like be rubbed the wrong way sometimes. But like we've really, like I would say for at least 10 years now, like really learned how we operate as a band and what works great.
Because have you guys all been to, like the same five of you the entire time?
Yeah, same.
That's
same for our bassist. We've moved off the road for things. But yeah, same group,
which is impressive. Like that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. It is a point of pride.
Yeah,
it is cool. But life happens. I mean, 20 years ostensibly as a band it's a lot of. I mean, they're my love relationship basically. I don't really have, the husband or wife experience. It's been them. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I like that you shared the part about like the sugar cult of like having someone there. Because again, like the more that you go through like these upper echelons of things, it's harder to find people that can relate and like add value to what you're doing.
It's true.
But I'm curious about him and like other people that you found along the way that, help guide that path.
Totally. I will say, like, I think it was a product of the time we were raised in, but like it was also kind of pervasive at the time to co-write or have another songwriter outside of the band. It almost sometimes was like I don't believe it, but it was a bullshit sort of narrative of like you're selling out or this isn't pure or did you write your own shit? And it's like what I found and what is now sort of the norm, and actually like I think what most artists lean on is finding like that collaborator or that person that can get the things out of you that maybe you can't on your own, And I am a songwriter, and I can pick up a guitar and take a day and write a song. But what I find more advantageous is finding those people that speak your language, and that collaboration is so fun. And then they're picking sounds and making a beat, and we're assembling together. And I still own, my point of pride is my lyrics and melody. So I want that to be pure, and I want it to come from me. And so rarely is there someone in the room like, writing for me. But often it's like, oh, maybe what if you like, it's just little things. But there is that like trust relationship, and it's only served us for the best,
Well, even when I was watching the Taylor Swift documentary about the Eras tour, like, because like I don't like she's really someone who like I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift person, put on a catchy song, whatever. But it was interesting seeing her creative process where it's been her and I don't know their names, but the same two guys that they go disappear. And I mean, she's the one. I mean,
Jack and Aaron, and then and then Max Martin, who she made the Sluts record with, which was in that doc,
yeah. And it was interesting to be like, is she a singer songwriter? Yes, but you have to surround yourself with the right people that inspire you. That like, if you have to get from A to C, they can help make that logical connection to B so you can get to C.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like, hey, ghostwrite this, I'll go sing it, or like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. You get it 90% there, I'll come fine tune. But it really is finding those right people. And again, like those right people. Like it's not like anybody can go do it or, oh, I need someone who has experienced singing or writing music. It's like, no. You understand my energy. You understand my vibe. You understand the context and environment I need you to succeed. You know how my brain works. Let's lock it and do this.
Well, and I think we've seen that in like all kind of forms of art as at least as I've gotten older and more exposed to the behind the scenes things. But it's like you can't make a film on your own. You can't write it. You could, I guess you could write a book on your own, but you still need sort of that. There's always been from the dawn of time that thing where like that collaboration elevates things, and like I don't know, I feel like takes it further. I think it's important. So.
Yeah, and speaking of taking it further, so you get signed. I mean, the dream of anybody who ever starts in a band.
Which was the dream, by the way. And like, it truly was get a record deal, which was so hot and sexy in the 90s and 2000s. Like that was the be and all. And then it was just be able to tour. Like everything else did not matter to me. Like I didn't think, I listened to bands that took like 3 or 4 records to get to like a place where maybe they even had notoriety. Like, so I wasn't expecting a radio song or anything like that instantly. It was more like just the access to like, oh, we get to make an album and like go tour it. How exciting! Like that. That was the stuff that mattered to me. Like even fame. Like I've from the beginning, fame has not ever been the the thing that I wanted to attain. It was success, right? Like it was. So if you were popular, like connecting, then there would be a degree of like notoriety, but it was never like I want to be the most famous guy in the world or like the most adored thing. That has never been like a central thing for me.
I mean, if you could look back from, again, like being in your 40s now, looking back, or even thinking about who you were there, how would you have defined success then?
Again, like it would have been, we sold out that coffee shop that we played in St. George,
Yeah.
and we got to have In-N-Out afterwards, and or the Killers think we're cool and are allowing us to open for them.
Yeah.
Or we have a van that we can hop in, even though it's a shitty shuttle bus, like, and I can go to Idaho and Nevada and St. George and Salt Lake and play 4 shows in a weekend or something. Because like that small potatoes.
Because that's what I love about it. Because like so many people, when they're creating something, feel like they're these like grandiose goals of success. Because success is so
amazing.
subjective.
Which is amazing. And
like there's that, but then there's also like enjoying the journey, but also realizing like, I mean, so many people are so incentivized by like, oh, I want to be famous, I want to be rich. But in reality, it's like once you reach those, like what next? But then also
truly is what next,
realizing like there's so much more joy in the process of like, I created a song that I saw someone sing every word to on the front row for the first time and being like,
yes,
holy shit, like that just happened.
Yes.
Or like being able to be like, hey, I have an album that people tour. Like people want me to sign, like not necessarily saying the fame side of things, but being like, I impacted these people's lives in a way.
Right. Like there's going to be byproducts of success. So like, yes, I'd rather, my experience with fame is it's been being famous in certain circles, certain maybe places I go. It's to be expected, but I've never gone after like buying followers on Instagram to grow the thing or to buy likes, or I've never wanted the like not being able to go like the Kim Kardashian or Taylor Swift fame experience. It's and like I've had taste of that when we've been at peaks, but it's just not, it's never been the driving force. And it's good because I feel like with our career, we had 5 or 6 years of like the ceiling kept getting higher and higher. So the degree of success kept changing. But I look at it and I've always maintained like, and it's so nice now that we have a career where like we can tour, we have a fan base, people show up, and we can put out records. And of course, it's fun to hear your song in something or on something. But I think those days have changed in the industry too. Like it's to tell you what from like 2009 to 2016 to like now what it is it's just 2 different worlds almost. So I think it's kept me grounded in the fact. I would say living in Salt Lake has kept me grounded. Like, I can leave all the time, but like it's kept. There's something like small lake city. There's something very like small and quaint and down to earth about living here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. And so I want to talk about, so you get signed and like this is when things start to take off.
Yeah.
And I'm curious of like, I mean, what that felt like as someone who just, I mean, was watching MTV and seeing music videos and aligning with that to now being like, I'm touring, people know my music. And like, I mean, I just imagine, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about like the first time they were on stage and seeing like, not just people like hearing a song, being like, oh, I like this. Like I can like bob along to this, whatever, but like knowing every word to every song or like, just like, I mean, for lack of a better word, like that hysteria behind it.
Yeah. Like it went from like our first real national tour was with 30 Seconds to Mars and Mute Math in 2010. And I was a fan of Mute Math. I was not a fan of Mars, but it was an opportunity. And they have such a huge, it's just Jared Leto. Like,
well, I went to, actually one of my favorite band shirts is a 30 Seconds to Mars shirt, but I too am not a 30 Seconds to Mars fan. But and because I partner with Live Nation for a lot of shows and stuff.
Oh,
and,
sure. Okay.
And so I actually went with Taylor Brody, who introduced us.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
Yeah, I
because
love
I
him.
did a giveaway for tickets, run it through the like comment picking thing, and it was him. I was like, hey man, like you win. He's like, well, do you want to go with me? I was like, sure.
Sure, it's very sure.
Yeah, it's like sure.
Yeah.
And it was fun, like whatever. But yeah, that's that's fun.
Yeah, it was an opportunity though, and like we were nobodies. Like we had a song, we had Animal out at Alt Radio, and Island was pushing it, and at the time, like the iTunes store was the thing. It wasn't Spotify yet, and we had like the featured single of the week. So there were like things that were really pushing us, and it felt for the first like we had a video on MTV and VH1, and like that still mattered still early.
Like there was enough like breadcrumbs that things were starting to feel very real.
Yeah,
very
and then
quickly.
this national tour, and so we're opening up and we're getting in front of these big crowds, and I remember it went from like because we did 2 legs with them. The first leg, Jared was really like nice and approachable and gave us like the bus code, and like for his bus, we were in a fucking van still, and like he's like, if you guys want to use our bikes, like very cool in the way of like I recognize you're young, so I'm gonna like be a nice guy. But then Animal like really got legs, and by the fall, like it was #1 at Alternative. It had taken like 43 weeks to get there, and so we were like really having a moment. And like I remember we had to not play one of the shows because we got an opportunity to play the Tonight Show, and like
Wow.
so things started like budding, and I noticed a shift with Jared. Like I just noticed there was all of a
It went from like, hey little brother, I know what it was like to like competition almost.
Yeah, and it was a lesson to be like, you could be Jared Leto, you could be like ostensibly one of the most good looking like guys and at the time, and I know now he's gone on to like be a little more creepy, but it was a lesson of like, you're Jared Leto, you're in 30 Seconds to Mars, why are you jealous of like a little moment that a little band's having, and I'm fine to talk about this because he's a jackass, but it was an opportunity, and then it kept coming. We opened for My Chemical Romance on their last tour before they disbanded for a while, and like Maroon 5, Taylor Swift, and then we started headlining our own shows, and so it was just, and then the next record came out and had Everybody Talks on it, and that blew us through, and then the next record I came out, and so that was a huge like turning point in our career and sort of our visibility, because it gave like a personality piece to us. And when I came out, I was still Mormon, and so the writer from Rolling Stone, Karen Gans, came out to Pleasant Grove where I was living in an apartment, and this was 2013, and she did a whole story about how I still wanted to be gay but wanted to be Mormon, and
Well, I feel like that's such a part of so many gay Mormons story. I mean, even like David Archuleta is the one who's like going around right now, and like even personal friends of mine, it's like, okay,
it's funny to watch. Not funny. I totally respect David, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. But like when I left the church and came out, it was like 2014 to 2016. Mm-hmm. By 2016, I had left in sort of a fiery way, and now I'm watching David do the same thing, and it's like good. Like he needs to talk about it and get it out of him.
Which is like one thing I love about going through faith crisis, especially like Mormon faith crisis, is like, if I sit down at a bar and talk to someone like, oh, you're Mormon? Like, no, it used to be like me too. Like within 5 minutes, you're bonded. You're almost bonded.
I know, it's a language.
But then there's people who, I mean, because like I was starting kind of my faith crisis when I was seeing you go through yours.
Oh
and
my
like,
God, okay.
and there was kind of like this, like, I wanted to defend the church in so much of it, but then I saw you, I was like, well, I get where they're coming from, and like,
wow.
And so there's like this cognitive dissonance, and like so many things I was putting on like my proverbial shelf during that time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like once you go through your faith crisis, and like it's always like these little breadcrumbs of like, oh, I'll post a beer on my story, or like I'm at a bar and like someone will be like, hey man, like I'm having questions too. Yeah. And you're like happy to talk, happy to be this person.
You remember how scared you were to talk about it sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Though? Like even and so like even little creeping doubts or things, because I came out, but I had aligned myself publicly in a major publication that I was still going to try to be Mormon, and of course that's really naive, right? Because like I didn't know what I was up against. I just knew I believe these things. They're good to me, and I'm having an experience of joy, so I'm not feeling I'm not feeling the pushback right away
And it's like the
that other
same,
people might have.
and it's the same process a lot of people go through, but just kind of like in a subtly stronger way, where like it's like when people leave, they're like, oh, I can fix this. Or like I can, like it's fine, like I
Yeah,
can be part
it's
of the
almost
change.
noble, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
in the same way, it's like, okay,
Make me an
I'm
example.
gay, but like I can still be this person to help fix this because I still feel that there's this good from this, and
Yes,
like I see good people and good things.
right.
Until then, there's like that point of like almost desperation, like, oh, just kidding, I can't.
Well, yeah, and that was the defeating part where I think when I did leave the church, I did it in a record, and I did it through art, and I did it through visuals, and I was writing a solo record at the time with Island Records. So David Massey had signed us. You know, we Neon Trees had put out 3 albums, and we sort of were taking tiniest hiatus. We were still active and
We had been
playing.
doing so much for so long. It's like
Yeah.
slight break.
Yeah,
Let's
and
chill for a
I was consciously going to make a solo record. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if that was going to like be I'm leaving the band and
I am now Beyonce. You
I'm
guys are
Beyonce or
Destiny's
Justin
Child.
Timberlake or whatever. Yeah, whoever. But and so I was writing songs, but when I was simultaneously going through this true like rejection feeling, the church had put out a policy that was enacted in handbooks in like late 2015.
Is that if you're like you're the child of a gay
You have to reject
family
your
of your
parents'
parents, yeah.
lifestyle to get baptized at 18. It classified, it felt like it doubled down and really made it transparent how the church feels about gay people. And before then, it was kind of still amorphous. And like, unless, at least for me, it was amorphous. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure people,
Right.
I know people were affected by it earlier. But that really was like the nail in the coffin for me. And like, because I had been so public trying to support the church through every interview before I even came out, we were associated as the LDS band. You know, we're in France. All they know at the time about Salt Lake is Mormons and polygamy, like thinking
Yeah.
they know anything about Salt Lake or Utah. So we were always associated with it, and we would stick up for it. We would, you know, at the time, and I just felt like backstabbed almost. Like I fought so hard to like for this thing that had no room for me from the beginning, and like rejected me, and it allowed me almost in a weekend to look at everything I'd ever questioned, and there's the internet, and there's podcasts, and there's Reddit, and like it was the most freeing and scary thing ever because I was like free falling for the first time.
I remember that.
It was exhilarating, but also like I can see, and how do I say this? I can see like how people fall into rabbit holes because once you start to uncover like, oh, that's not true and that was made up, or that was I believed in that and that clearly wasn't the truth, like you start to go, what else have I been like? And then, you know, by the end of the weekend I was an atheist. Like I was just like, well, nothing's real and I have to stop here or I'm gonna become a conspiracy theorist.
Next thing you know, you're like the strongest.
I was watching
nihilist in the world.
9/11 videos and like, yeah. Anyway,
Well, because like I remember that with me too. Because like I went almost in like a week or because like going back to my semi story was
yeah,
go to Seattle, have like
yeah. You got out.
correct like space from it all, experience my things, and like it was even one of those like my like partner at the time. She was like, "Oh, I've never really like smoked or tried weed before." I'm like, "Well, that's gotta happen."
Yeah,
And then next thing I know, I'm like at happy hours. I'm like, yeah, we're drinking again.
yeah.
And then I come back to Salt Lake and was working at a place where it's like very LDS. Like the Monday mornings meetings we had, it was like, oh, did you learn at church yesterday? And
Yeah.
I would realize like I have to draw my own line in the sand and like put this to bed forever. And so it's same thing. Like you start looking at Reddit, you start Googling, you start looking at CES letter, like things like that. And all of a sudden, like within 2 weeks, I'm like, well, and it's like, it's so weird to have that like red pill moment where it's like, you just like almost dissociate because like everything that you've thought you knew doesn't exist anymore. And going from like omniscience, eternity down to like, oh, I guess it's me and this and
That
people
and
I love.
also the amount of shame I had at that point that I was carrying around because I was like, yeah, I'm happy to be out finally, and I was dating a person publicly and like it felt good, and my parents received me well, like my family was
That's
supportive.
the huge one, yeah.
It was beautiful, but like I still carried so much guilt because I was like, I'm never going to be the guy that's going to drag the church or like blame God or whatever narrative. Like I had wholeheartedly believed I was the one given the challenge and I was choosing to indulge in that because I needed happiness. Um, and the relinquishing of that, like the minute I was like, oh wait, that's made up. I don't even have to, like, it was like, it was like the highest of highs. Like I love weed and mushrooms and stuff. I've never felt higher and more exhilarated than relinquishing that shame.
Yeah.
And that was what making that music was about, and making those music videos. And like, I know it was salacious, and I knew it was like going to like offend people when I was doing
Yeah.
temple signs and like, but I was doing it through real pain and art. And I wasn't, if you can believe me, I wasn't doing it just to shock. Like it truly was a true expression of what I was feeling in real time.
Well, it's like my own, like, I mean, again, like faith crisis story of like getting to that, like the person I am today was so intense. It was so intimate. There's only like a handful of people that were like there for me during that journey. And like
Yeah.
for everybody else, like as far out as could be.
Yeah.
And to get to that, like to experience that in like my own bubble was one thing, and like broke me in so many different ways. But to do that in a place where it's like so public, and having gone from being like the Mormon band and defending it to like Rolling Stone magazine to music videos, and like like that's such a different like load to bear, like carry through it all.
That was the thing too, is like, you know, I think most gay men and women, queer people are told like the scariest thing is to come out to your friends and family because you don't want them to think of you differently. That was scary in and of itself, but the acceptance that I got from the people in my life was amazing. It was when I left the church that I saw the real cracks in like who was there for me and who wasn't, like who got spooked by that and couldn't hang anymore. Even within my family, it like my older brother and I didn't speak for a year, and like my mom was really scared, and we are all great now, and like since have like as a family like left and like really strong together. But it was way more of a process announcing that I didn't believe in the church anymore, and probably in the way I did it was a lot. But
but to be the person you are, that is inherently very artistic and very like thoughtful about that, like, and especially to think of like, because it's one thing
it's a gift to be able to have something like that and be able and write about it and express yourself about it.
And like, especially like when you think of the strength of the emotions that you're feeling at that time, and the way that you choose to express moments up, like emotional feelings up until then, like it makes sense why you did it that way, because it's the only way that really felt like you could.
Yeah, because I'd written like maybe 4 or 5 songs that were kind of just like, oh, this is a solo Tyler thing, but then these things were happening to me in real time when I was making this record, and I was like, I have actual shit I can write about and pour into, and it just, the music came alive, and it wasn't just writing catchy songs. It was like, I'm really pouring something into this. And I Neon Trees put us on the map. It still is my bread and butter. It still is like the most accessible thing that I've done to people, and the thing I get referenced the most for. But like, more often than not, the most meaningful messages and the most meaningful conversations on the street I get is about that specific excommunication record. And that means a lot to me, because it was also a flop. Like it didn't cut through in a pop way that maybe the label wanted, because at that point I was like, I'm not even thinking about a single at radio. Like I'm making a record that means everything to me. So it has gone on in the last 10 years to have a life and a meaning and a purpose, and that gives me, again, like goes back to my fame was never the center. You know, it's those real meaningful things that I know, and it, like, the thing about the church is like there are always people leaving it. Like it almost is like people graduating from high school. Like so constantly people are discovering that album or referenced it, like, oh, you're leaving or you're going through this faith thing, like you need to hear this. So it's a constant like reoccurring thing in my life, which is really, really cool. And I feel far from it.
Yeah.
The pain.
Well, it's like, and I love the way that you phrase that, because again, like even going back to like definition of success and what that means, and also like that intimate communicate or the intimate connection that comes with like experiencing that faith crisis,
Yeah.
to have something that can be such a big dot on people's map of how to explore that. Like that is,
Yeah.
again, like you could have the breadth that you've experienced of, I mean, popularity, exposure of like neon trees. And as soon as Everybody Talks comes on, I mean, everybody is
Yeah, it's a
feeling
jam.
it.
Like
But
it's
then you
yeah.
have this like extreme depth of this
Mhm.
album where it's like, yeah, maybe a few thousand, tens of thousands, whatever the number is, really listened to it, understood it, and accepted it, but it meant the world to them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's only influenced my writing in the trees since then too, and it only has like affected it. And like, you know,
Successful side quest.
yeah, no, it's great. And like it's been beautiful. Like my drummer, and I'm not speaking for her because she's been public about it, but she's been through her own journey with faith and sexuality, and just came out last year, and she's been married for 3 years to the love of her life, and she's a little older than me, and she watched me go through it, and wasn't there for me when I was, but I was able to be there for her, and we have created such a different like base to our friendship and our career and like who we are, and there's so much more room to be free even in the band. So it's been a really sweet journey.
Yeah.
I will say.
I don't know why like my brain keeps going to, so watched Heated Rivalry like a month or two
Yeah.
ago.
Okay.
And the first time I started watching, I was like, what did I get myself into?
Sure. I mean,
but then by the end,
explicit.
I'm like wiping my
It's,
tears
like,
away.
emotional.
And like, cause like I have a lot of gay family, especially like my cousin and his boyfriend live up in Portland, and like
Cool.
he came out in the 90s, and
Yeah,
like,
different
and that's a whole
times.
nother story of like how kind of the family rejected him, but now it's come full circle towards accepting. And like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting to see the people who have experienced or like been on the sidelines for the people experiencing it. It's intimate. Like also like with your drummer, like paves the road for her to be like, hey, actually, like I want to talk to you about this. 'Cause I've
She
seen it.
she felt safe, and I was able to be like years away from my experience with it and the painful side of it, and go like, you owe no one anything. Like you don't even have to announce it if you don't want to. Like, take the pressure off. It is your life. And a lot of that informed Love Loud. Like,
Yeah, it's a good pivot to that, yeah.
that's a nice segue, because I would say, as much as I'm proud on a kind of a mainstream or a global thing with what I've been able to do with my band, what I've been able to like influence Salt Lake with, I think my extension has been Love Loud, and like being a vocal point for a lot of disenfranchised youth, men and women, that like experienced faith and felt rejection. And that's where Love Loud was birthed. Dan Reynolds from Imagine Dragons was given this opportunity to do like a documentary in 2017, and he and I had been friends, but also like he had felt guilt because he didn't feel like he had really been there for me when I was publicly going through what we just talked about with the church and sort of my coming out and leaving. And he had called me, and we started just like brainstorming about like, what if we did like a festival? And this is 2017, so I think festivals were like definitely a norm, but they weren't maybe as saturated as they are even now, right?
Totally.
But we were talking about at the beginning was just like how hard it is to get support, let alone like to just put on a music festival that's palatable to anyone is hard, but then to do a nicheified version where it's like, this is in support of disenfranchised LGBT people that need a place to feel accepted because of the rejection of the church or rejection of their families. Like, that's a tall order. And we did it in Orem the first year at the ballpark there by UVU. And it was so fraught. Like, the way just people even talked about it is actually reminiscent of how people talk about it now. And we can get into why, because of the current administration, and there's a lot of red tape again. But it was such a miracle to get 20,000 people to come down to like Happy Valley or out in Happy Valley, and we were not shying away. Like, we definitely had speakers talking about Mormonism, and like then we had my band perform, and Imagine Dragons performed, and Nick from Walk the Moon came out, and like there were a couple other artists that Corella did a DJ set. Like this is back in 2017, so that era, but it was a 20,000 attended small stadium show in support of LGBT people, and it was a miracle. And then we did it again at Rice Eccles the next year, and it was even bigger. And like Mike Shinoda from the Linkin Park came out, and Kesha headlined the next year, and it's always been true to what our mission statement was, to just provide unabashed like love and support to LGBT people, especially within faith. And that's what differentiated us. It wasn't just another pride event, which is beautiful. We need so many of those, and visibility is so important. But like Love Loud was birthed from me and Dan's religious trauma and like experience. And so there's a real heart and soul there. And we're 10 years into it, and 2027 is going to be our 10 year. And we're hoping to do like a nice big Salt Lake City return. But it's really hard because DEI has been stripped, and the mask really came off with this. I won't get too political, but the mask really came off with this second term, and it came off with a lot of like the corporations that were really supportive in the past, and now like are like, oh, like we're allowed to not be allies, where it was like the cool thing to do, and now it's like we're really in need again. I think a lot of not just queer organizations, but women's organizations, and obviously, minority groups as well. Like I think there's just even more red tape to get through. So we're not doing an event this year because it's hard, and you think like, oh, like it's Dan from Imagine Dragons, it's like Tyler from Neon Trees, it's like they've done these big events at Delta Center, like Rice Eccles. How is it not feasible? And it's like we are a foundation that needs support from deep pockets, to put on these events.
And that's been the hardest part of, I think, again, like with the recent administration, and especially like I felt it like last Pride, of just like, oh, we don't have to do this anymore. It's not cool to do it anymore. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of sad to see the people who did it because they thought people wanted it, which is like such like a corporate facade, of course, in so many ways. But
I mean, as a gay person, like we would feel it every June, like
time to change our Twitter like
the fucking bank has a rainbow like decal now.
Thank
cool,
you.
Thanks. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but like, I think the hardest thing about it recently is like, and like Dave Chappelle talked about it in like the stand up he got a ton of like strife for, where he's like, hey, like trans people, like I hear you, I see you, but we're not even to where we want to be with black people yet. And like, so even like with this last year, it's like, oh, like people don't even see women as equals, and like black people, Hispanic people, and like to be like, okay, we need to make sure everybody's accepted. It's like we are so much further behind than we thought.
There's so much work, and it's also trans people are 1% of the population and just trying to like exist, and yet they have been made the boogeyman. And, and I've it's cyclical. I've lived long enough to see like from the 80s and 90s with AIDS and gay men, and then it's like, what can we make? What can we other? Who's
the new boogeyman?
What's easy to make the boogeyman, and that is trans people, and it's there is so much more work, and it's complicated. It's like sometimes I understand the LGBT community is a force stronger together, but yet as a cis gay white man who's also ex-Mormon and living in Salt Lake, I have my own set of obstacles, and like, and the pool is really small, and there is a lot of specificity and nuance that sometimes it feels like we're not allowed to even talk about publicly, like especially online, without it being risk of getting clipped or getting misunderstood. And so I think there, like to your point, there's so much work to be done in all groups and minority groups, and yet it seems like the purpose of this administration is to like villainize all of these groups.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in that same light though. I'm very excited for next year because I mean, if you have to take a year off from this, it means you have another year for that. Yeah, and I mean, it's been fun to see. Like, I remember the first time I heard of Love Loud was when I went to Silicon Slopes. I think it was 2019 when Dan spoke about it,
Yeah.
And like, cause I'd like seen, I mean, posts about it or like stories over the years and like didn't necessarily know what it was.
Yeah.
And then hearing him talk about it and like even him owning up to being like, well, it's an interesting then because I remember him saying like, there's people I wish I could have stood up for.
Yep.
And so it's interesting hearing you now being like, hey, we're one of those people.
I was, and he says that like he's very vocal about that, especially at our Love Loud events. I think he's always been sort of conscious of not wanting to be like, I'm the big straight dumb white guy speaking for all of you. Like he's very deferential when it comes to like the needs and I feel like I am not the money guy. I'm not the guy that's gonna enter the room and like raise funds. But I am a storyteller and I'm an empath, and I think my purpose in Love Loud and on the board is to retain that heartbeat and soul and like reason why we do it. And like we often talk about LGBT youth when we use phrases and language, and I'm always like, I'm not fucking young anymore, and I still need these resources. Like I need to feel empowered because I will go home in my apartment in downtown Salt Lake, and some nights I'm lonely as hell, and the shadow of the temple being rebuilt is there, and I'm thinking too hard. Like I've done a lot of work, and like I've healed a lot, and Love Loud has been a part of that. But I also, feel sometimes small, and I know if me who gets access to travel and tour and all the things that I've been able to like do and see, if I have the ability to still feel small at this level and this age in my life, then the 12-year-old kid in Ogden that needs that support or is being rejected by their family, like obviously that's hyperbole, but like those things exist.
They're not, they don't happen in nothingness, and it's more common than any of us would like to believe.
We want to do like also, we understand you have to like change with the times too, right? And so like I think Love Loud wants to do something where it's almost like South by Southwest, where we do like a takeover and really like shine a light on local bars and restaurants as well, and like make it like you could go see Perfume Genius play at Whitehorse, or hypothetically, but like cool kind of like an actual like blocks takeover that's a Love Loud fest, and it's maybe 2 days, or we have like goals, because it's like sometimes is that like going to an arena or a stadium to watch 7 artists play, is that maybe the best way to reach,
It's always fun to try something new. And
so that's exciting. And I think coming back to Salt Lake and really making it like Salt Lake and Utah focus is a really exciting component for us too.
So I'm curious, from like the world you live in, the life you live, I mean, and especially thinking of like going back to the velour and like what it was of like this launch pad for all these bands, and like it's always wild to me of looking at Utah and like the bands that have come through. I mean, everything, and like have like roots here. I mean, even like Dan Reynolds and the Imagine Dragons, The Used. I mean, Cascade went to the University of Utah. Like the list goes on and on and on.
The Aces.
The Aces.
The
Aces are amazing. They were like, my friend's partner was best friends with their bassist. And like, so I'd always see him on the story. And then long story short, it was like at their engagement party. And like my friend got really drunk, and it was like these two sides of friends trying to like be like, no, I got my friend. And like, no, I got my friend. And we had just like had like a fun night connecting. So whenever they're in town, I always like to go see them, and they're great.
Oh, they're the best. Yeah.
But I mean, who else do you see on the map, or like any up and coming Utah artists that people should pay attention to?
I mean, I have bias. Like there's a band called Pool House that had a little moment last year on TikTok. Like, I don't even know how to like gauge what little viral moments mean anymore, but like it seemed that they had like some access, and we had them open for us twice last year, like at our Salt Lake show, and then one up at the U. And they're really cool and young and doing cool. They're like a band again. Like, I don't know. I love artists. I love artists of all kinds, but there was a moment where it seemed like people weren't starting bands. They were more like starting artist projects and things like that. And they're like, I think 17, 18, 19-year-old kids that are like playing like their version of cool modern indie rock.
Hell yeah.
And then I'm biased too, because Denny Fuller, who is our touring bassist now in Neon Trees. He plays in a sort of like Beatlesy Baroque pop outfit called the Melons. and they're really cool. And they're if you didn't know, you'd think you were listening to like the Beach Boys or like the Beatles or something, and they're doing some cool shit. I hate that I'm not as in touch with like the full heartbeat of the local scene, but I feel like I'm still kind of out there. You know, I'm
life
still trying to
evolves.
discover
Different priorities.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to make sure we cover?
No, thank you for. I mean, whatever.
No, this has been great. I always love
Go to the Green Room. The Green Room's my favorite bar and
Green Bar.
Salt Lake.
Dude, I went to the Green. So we did a TikTok a couple weeks ago where it's like a bartender bar crawl where I started here and I was like, where am I going next? What am I getting? So from here to, and then like I had an idea of where I was gonna go.
Yeah.
But it was here to Bar X to
Of course.
Quarters to Water Witch to Green Room.
Yeah.
And I was
those
like
are
so
good
glad
hands.
to
Great
every
hands.
time I go to Green Room, the
I
vinyl's
almost don't want to talk
great.
about it too much because like last year there was a sweet spot where Green Room was kind of like an undiscovered gem.
Yes.
Now there's like a line at the door sometimes. It's a special spot. It's really cool.
We take it back. Don't go to the Green Room.
James, what's up?
But want to wrap up with the two questions I ask everybody at the end of each episode. Number one, if you had someone on the Small Lake City podcast and heard more about what they're up to in their story, who would you want to hear from?
I would say Amy Redford or Sky Emerson, who are friends of mine. Amy being the daughter of Robert Redford and like having a lot of influence in Sundance and film. And Sky, who's a screenwriter. I did a short film with them last summer, and we're kind of taking it to the festival circuits, hopefully. But we actually premiered it here, and I got to record a song for it at Spy Hop down on Harvey
Spy Hop.
Milk. And I love what Spy Hop's doing. So just to shout out some
Yes.
some Salt Lake local stuff. But Amy's amazing. But if you couldn't get Amy, like Sky Emerson, she's incredible. She's also gone through like a faith and sexuality journey, and she's really smart, and she's very Utah Hive and very like but you know, I think they just got a deal with a major studio for distribution for a film. So like
Amazing.
they're doing cool stuff.
Oh yeah,
So
love
I
cool
would-
people doing
yeah,
cool stuff.
Definitely talk to them.
And then lastly, if people want to keep up with you, what you're working on, Love Loud, I mean, all your other projects,
Yeah.
what's the best place to find information?
Instagram and Twitter, Tyler in a Coma. That's a Smiths reference. And then Neon Trees and Love Loud Fest are all the handles. And I'm going on tour with the Goo Goo Dolls this summer, Neon Trees. So
What a
catch
lineup.
us- Catch us out there in the States. And yeah, it'll be fun.
Tyler, you're awesome. Like, it's like like every episode for the most part, I always think I'm like, oh, okay, it's gonna go like this, but then I always end up having like a way better time than
Good.
I think
Okay,
I'm going
cool.
to. So
I wanted to be as specific to Salt Lake as I could, but like also,
I mean,
there's a lot of stories to tell. So.
it goes around and comes back. It's good, but no, I'm stoked for the film to go through the film festivals. Stoked to go on tour with Goo Goo Dolls. Stoked for, I mean, just you in general. You're like, I love the projects you keep your hands in because I know they're things that matter to you.
Yeah, I have passion. I know when I don't have passion because I'm kind of tuned out and I don't engage as much. So.
Well, like that's when, because like I tend to be pretty hypercritical of like amateur music.
Sure.
But like the thing that I always love is like if I show up, like the one thing that's nice about Edison House is they usually have live music Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
But like if I see someone like this, like again, it's like that you look like you're performing for 10,000 people and there's 10 people here.
If you give a fuck, you believe in it. You're like, you know what? You believe in it.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah.
So you are someone who gives a fuck and believes in it.
I do. Thank you. Thanks for noticing.
No. Yeah, it's hard to not notice in the best of ways.